We're super excited to have you here. This is our first ever Parent University, and so we really wanted to partner with parents and open up the conversation and share information with you about a variety of topics and work that the district is doing. And so thank you for taking your time this evening. So we've got a variety of people that are going to be sharing with you tonight. And so we'll do introductions in just a few minutes. Ms. Heather. Oh. So we wanted to just set out some clear goals for our time together tonight. We do want to have open communication between the home and the school, always. We want to partner with you just to clarify the process that the district uses when a bullying allegation surfaces. And just to help you understand what our internal investigation process looks like. Tonight's entire topic is around the bullying and preventing it. Yesterday was National Kindness Day, by the way, so we were excited to see our students and our buildings doing some work around that to try to promote that. And then lastly, we want to provide some resources for families if you believe that a bullying situation is occurring with your child. So tonight, because we've got a pretty large size group and because our time is limited, we do need to stick to some norms or guidelines for how we're going to run our time together. And so what we would ask for everyone in the room to do tonight is just to listen, to understand when someone's talking. We're going to just operate in a collegial and a friendly environment and atmosphere. And we're going to respect the perspective that other people are bringing to the table tonight. And then lastly, we would just ask that everybody would balance their output with their input. So the way we're going to structure our time together, we've got some information to share with you. So for our first part, it might be about a half an hour. And then we're going to break up into small groups. And so if you have children in multiple buildings, it's up to you to decide if you would like to go with the elementary group or the middle and junior high group or the high school group. But we have some scenarios for you that we're going to be discussing, and we'll follow a protocol, again, just to make sure that we get through all of our discussion and everybody has the opportunity to share. Sorry. Is that a little better? Thank you. Can you hear me a little better now?
Yeah.
So most importantly, we want to recognize just who's in the room. We want to honor our superintendent, Mr. Melvin Brown. I know you know him.
I get to be in the background somehow.
And he's really the reason that we are initiating these conversations, because we want to have an open time with you as families. But also want to call attention to the members of the committee that have helped design the content for tonight, as well as they're going to be presenting. So we've got social workers, school counselor, building administrators, and district administrators that you'll be hearing from tonight. So there are their names, and when you hear from them, they'll introduce their name also. But also want to call Mrs. Melissa Ray. She's our English as a second language coordinator for the district. I'd like to call her up now too.
I talk pretty loud, so I think we're good. I just wanted to, of course, welcome you and then draw your attention to a couple interpreters in the room should you need the support of an interpreter. We have Ifra Alial, who's a Somali interpreter. She's also an employee in the district. She teaches at 9X, so that's an added bonus for us. We have Kathy Kenyatta, who is a Spanish interpreter, so if you need those supports, feel free. Hari Gutam, who's also a teacher here in the district, who can support with Nepali, and then our bilingual family liaison, Mukti, who's an employee of the district, Mukti Rajal, who can support. So anytime if you need that, just find them. They'll be floating around between the different grade level breakouts, and they'll be more than willing to help you.
So the first piece of information that we want to share with you is hopefully you're starting to hear about our district's strategic plan. If you haven't heard about it, it's located on the district's website at reyn.org. And the purpose of the strategic plan is just to carve out the work that we're going to be doing in the next 5 years. So the strategic plan is organized into 4 different areas, and it's organized around student learning, student experience, communication, and finance. And so what we're doing this evening is part of the student experience focus area. And the whole purpose of student experience work is to build a community in which students feel safe, supported, and included and engaged. And so part of being safe is not feeling bullied when you're at school. And so we would encourage you to go to the district's website, take a peek at that strategic plan, and just understand where we're headed. Was anybody in the room a part of that process? Just curious. We engaged a large group of community stakeholders, parents, community members, as well as some school employees to carve out that work.
And students.
And students. Most important to have their voice in the room, absolutely. So part of the work that we're doing under student experience is around social emotional learning. Last year when we were designing the 9X Impact, our high school academy that we've added for all of our freshman students, we did a survey with students in grades 8 through 12. And one of the questions that we asked, I'm going to paraphrase, but it was essentially, what is a topic that is of most concern to you? We wanted to hear the students' perspectives. And what they told us was alarming. They said depression, anxiety, and stress. And that was consistent from grades 8 through 12. So in other words, 8th graders were saying it as well as seniors in high school. And that was alarming to us. As parents, you probably recognize children feel that. So that's our work around social emotional learning. We want to try to build those skills in students and staff, adults as well, so that when stressful situations come along, as they all do in life, that we have some skills to cope with it. So Heather Casperson, one of our social workers, is going to speak to you a little more about that.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming tonight. Like she said, I am a social worker at Herbert Mills Elementary, and a big thing we are pushing this year is the social emotional learning, because we know that when kids come to school, it's not just about academics, they're carrying a lot with them. They have a lot going on outside of the classroom, we need to be aware of that, and we need to help that. So social emotional learning is the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So within SEL, there are 5 competencies up here. So there's self-awareness, social awareness, responsible decision-making, self-management, and relationship skills, So within these competencies, we're teaching kids different things, like taking the perspective of others, building relationships, resolving issues, compassion, empathy, communication skills. So we want to focus on all of these to reduce any kind of conflicts kids are having with one another, because we need to make them aware of how they impact others with their actions and their behaviors. And these social and emotional competencies are a big part of that. Furthermore, there's the restorative practices approach that we've definitely been using a lot at Herbert Mills. And this is a strategy that seeks to repair the relationships with kids and when things have been damaged, including those damaged through the conflict and the bullying. So we want to bring the kids together. We want to, our goal is to have everyone see how they've impacted others, feel remorse, feel empathy, and hopefully restore those relationships with each other and create some forgiveness and just build stronger relationships in a safer community for everyone. So those are the social and emotional aspect, and now we're going to jump in with Mr. Thornhill, who is an assistant principal at Hannah Ashton. He's going to get us started with all the bullying and conflict conversation.
All right, good evening.
Good evening.
How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. I'm gonna turn this off. Yeah, so if I just do the mic drop. Good. I don't want to hurt anyone's ears this evening. All right, so what I want to share with you first is our district definition, what we use to define bullying in Reynoldsburg City Schools. And what I really want to share with you is that this policy is just not out of a vacuum. This policy is informed by U.S. federal legislation. This policy is also informed by the Office of Civil Rights, the Reynoldsburg City Schools Board of Education Policy, PO 5517, and this shows up in our Student Code of Conduct as our Code 10. So the reason why we attach it and we align what we do to the federal and civil rights is the definitions constantly change, and we also work with our Board of Education and our attorneys to kind of always update this definition. So that's why we work to align our policies. So one thing I want to say is that this is an intentional verbal or physical act that a student has exhibited toward another student, staff member, or volunteer more than once. Okay, and I emphasize that. This intentional act also includes violence within the dating relationship. This behavior both causes mental or physical harm to the other person and is sufficiently severe, persistent, or pervasive that it creates an intimidating, threatening, or abusive educational environment for the other person. Okay?
Sorry.
Also within that code in the Student Guide of Conduct, it also states that this behavior is prohibited on school property at school-sponsored activities, or may apply to off-campus conduct that occurs outside of the school's educational activities or programs if such creates a hostile, offensive, or intimidating environment within the school. So if something's happening outside the building that also affects what's going on inside the building, that applies. In the event of a one-time incident, administration shall determine and implement discipline to their discretion. So I definitely want to inform you of what our Code of Conduct states. So we have a short video, and it's about 4 minutes, and so it kind of goes over those definitions, and then when we're finished, we're going to kind of flesh out some things.
Talks about bullying.
We have some technical
Back here next week as we continue to explore some of the realities about bullying. And remember, when we stand together, no one stands alone. See ya!
Sorry, I didn't realize I was blocking out the audience. Okay. All right. So what we'd like to do is just kind of flesh out some of those definitions. And this is a video from National Bullying Prevention. And so in conflict, typically there's a disagreement or difference of opinion. And what we explain, it's part of socialization, it's part of hanging out with other people. And usually when there's a conflict, there's equal power between the people involved. It's not due to size or other factors, age, that they're all the same. It's equal mutual conflict. Usually it's isolated. It happens on occasion. And usually when we work to solve a conflict, it happens, we work together, we resolve it, we mediate, and both parties are satisfactory, we communicate with parents, and we're good to go. In bullying, it does not stop. even after we have mediated, keeps going. It happens repeatedly. The intent of it is to harm someone on purpose. It causes serious physical harm, serious emotional harm, and then we have that imbalance of power. You know, someone of larger size versus someone smaller size, or status, or, you know, freshman versus a, you know, senior. There's an imbalance of power. Okay? All right, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Jared Ball, who is our assistant principal at Baldwin STEM.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? Good? Okay. I have the distinct privilege of getting to talk to you a little bit about social media and neighborhood situations in terms of how the school kind of may go about handling those. And if you would humor me for a minute, I'd like you to kind of think back a little bit, a little visualization here, to the 12 or 13-year-old version of yourself for a second. Think about maybe the activities that you may have been involved in. Maybe think about some of the things maybe your parents weren't even aware that you were doing, okay? And think about then having those issues magnified with the power of social media. Being a parent, you know, in today's society with a lot of these things is not necessarily an easy task, you know, with a lot of the access that our kids have. If you think about all of the things that, you know, they have at their fingertips and how quickly they can get a hold of information. First question I've got for you, does anybody know what the legal age requirement of signing up for social media is? It is 13 years of age, okay? The reason it is 13 years of age is because of this federal law, the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, okay? And there's a couple reasons that is. Number one, it's to protect your child's personal information, okay? Right? Because we know that people can do identity theft and a variety of other things. And the thing is that a large number of our children are on social media before they're 13 years of age. I can tell you, you know, being in a building that's 5th grade through 8th, there is a mass amount of kids that are 10 years old with social media. And the way they get by that is they just lie about their age, okay? So they're putting themselves at risk, okay, in ways when they're doing that. Additionally, if you think about it, where a kid's at developmentally, they lack the capacity to navigate a lot of those social situations that they're going to run into in an online forum or any of those apps or anything along those lines. And, you know, we see it every day in schools where kids come into those peer conflicts, as Mr. Thornhill was talking about, and they just lack that capacity because their brain is not fully developed yet to be able to navigate those situations. And so because of those two reasons, you know, it can be a very slippery slope. So as far as how the school handles these situations, we kind of revert back to what we talked about in the Code of Conduct. So if something were to occur through social media, okay, whether it be Snapchat, our kids really aren't on Facebook all that much anymore. They always tell us it's for old people, okay? But, you know, Snapchat or Instagram or whatever it may be, you know, kids are constantly communicating, going back and forth, liking, unliking, saying things, probably that they shouldn't in some way, shape, or form. So the question is then, when does a school get involved? And ultimately that decision goes back to this wording in the back half of the Student Code of Conduct. So if something happens outside of school, because, you know, back when I grew up, if something happened outside of school, it was outside of school, okay? That had nothing to do with the school, right? The old adage, right, if there was going to be an altercation, it was, you know, okay, meet me off school property, that kind of stuff, okay? That adage doesn't exactly function anymore, okay? And social media is a big part of that. So if something were to happen off, you know, outside of school hours, whatever it may be, if any number of those things contribute to, as this wording says, a hostile, offensive, or intimidating environment in the school, okay, where the learning is disruptive, where kids can't focus and they can't do what they need to do to be able to function day to day, then the school will step in and be involved in that. Now when we get later on into our processes as far as how we go about that and investigate it, it'll kind of tie a lot of that in. That likewise goes with neighborhood issues. Okay, we have lots of situations that may occur outside of school hours. It may occur, you know, not even on school property or in any number of those things. And the laws have changed. The courts have adapted, you know, to equate some of these changes as well. You know, one of the things we talk to quite frequently is when we talk about door to door. Okay, for just an example, you know, if your child's walking home from school, or they get off the bus and they are, headed home and something happens to them, an assault occurs or something of that nature. That's off school grounds, yes, but they are still under the protection and the purview of the school district in terms of safety until they reach your doorstep. And so it all goes back to that verbiage. If it's creating a hostile environment in some way, shape, or form, okay, within the school day, within the school grounds in some way, shape, or form, that's also when the school is going to become involved. So the school's obligations, as far as those things are concerned, ultimately are obviously to put a stop to that. But it's also more than that. Okay, this isn't necessarily an issue we can suspend our way out of. Okay, that's why throughout the state, and in the district as a whole, we've worked towards those restorative practices. We need to actually address the situations and the problems at hand. That way we can teach the kids and help them adapt to the situation and learn how they're able to deal with the situation in a much more positive light. So the idea is, like we said, to eliminate the harassment, eliminate the issues, work towards preventing those in the future, and obviously trying to fix those through some sort of form of a remedy. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Naisha Clayton now. She's an assistant principal at Wagner Junior High, and she's going to talk to you about that specific process.
Good evening. I tried to condense these a little bit, but they're so important that we're going to have to spend a little bit of time, because this is after you make a phone call and say, this is happening with my child, what are you going to do about it? Right? That's usually the first thing we hear. So the first thing we want to do, once we hear an accusation or an allegation, is we want to make sure that our students are safe, okay? And if we think that a crime is suspected, we can turn it over automatically to law enforcement. We are mandated reporters, so we do have to report to Franklin County Children's Services. And it's good to know that if police are involved, there are times that they completely take over the investigation. If police take over the investigation, it is out of our hands, and we wait for them to finalize, and then we join back in with them. While investigation is going on, there are interim measures that may include the following: stay-away agreements or no contact orders. We can offer counseling, and we'll hear a little bit about that later. We can do immediate things like change schedules, change seating. In buildings that operate on teams, we'll make sure students are on different teams. We may change transportation, provide safety escorts. If a student needs to be removed from the building during an investigation, that is also an option. We will provide academic accommodations for those students, and of course, make parent contact. The second thing we want to do is give our complainant options for making a formal or informal complaint. Informal complaints can be simple. That's that phone call that you make to us. That can be us talking to your student. And we also want to make sure that they understand our code of conduct and what's expected. Of course, if there are certain situations that involve non-consensual relationships, things like that, we cannot have informal complaints. That has to be a formal complaint. And that is always conducted by an administrator, and we are following Reynoldsburg City Schools Code of Conduct and policy. Third thing we want to do is get into that investigation. Again, we're going to follow Code of Conduct and follow board policy. Our interview process includes, of course, interviewing the student, taking statements, watching any video. That includes video at school, video on the bus. We then will prepare an investigation summary of all of our findings. It includes statements. It includes strategies that we will give moving forward. We will also send formal letters to parents, all parents involved, letting them know what happened during the investigation and what came out of the investigation. Also, if bullying has been found, substantiated that it happened, we have to report that back to the state. The fourth thing we have to do is implement actions to eliminate, prevent, and remedy, and that's what Ms. Holly talked about at the beginning, our main goal here is to prevent the bullying from occurring. Those things include discipline, follow-up training with students, working in teams, working in groups. That's when our social workers and our guidance counselors come into play. We follow up with training for our staff if need be. I mentioned before, stay away agreements or no contact, so we will follow up with those, making sure that those students are following those expectations. And finally, continuing to offer counseling if needed. I will now turn it over to Jamie Johnson, principal of Taylor Road Elementary.
Hello. So I will be talking to you briefly in the next few slides about FERPA. FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. So most people are familiar with HIPAA, which is what holds basically your medical records. So it prevents your medical offices from sharing your medical information and things of that nature with anyone besides yourself. Schools are under the same obligation with these things. This federal law protects the privacy of student education records. It applies to any and all schools that receive funds under a program of the U.S. Department of Education. And FERPA gives parents certain rights with respect to their own children's educational records. So what are educational records? So those include anything that is directly related to a student. So testing information, emergency medical forms, things of that nature, or anything also that's maintained by us, by the school education agency or institution. And schools have to have written permission from a parent or student in order to release any information from a student's educational record. So a lot of times we'll, if we want to release, like we'll have students who have outside counseling services, parents will sign a release of information we can share with that group. If you have a child who turns 18 during the time that they're within school, the transfer of rights goes to them, and they actually have to issue permission to parents in order to share that information after that birthday occurs. One of the reasons why this is an important part of our bullying presentation is what we get a lot from parents a lot of the times is wanting to know what happens to, they will call and give us a complaint. We'll investigate, we do our disciplinary things, we go through all of our things, and then parents want to know what happens to the other child. And so we're prevented by this law from sharing those consequences of the other student with you, but we can share that information about what we're going to do to protect your child moving forward with you. So that's kind of how it relates to bullying as far as that goes. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our next section where we're going to kind of get into our small groups and get busy.
Hi, my name is Chris Stody. I'm a teacher at Wagner Road Middle School. At this point in the evening, we are going to split up into grade band, and we are going to look at some scenarios, and as a group, we're going to make decisions on whether or not we believe that these situations are bullying or if it's a student conflict situation. So we will have, if your child is in elementary school, we're going to go over there, and you'll be with a facilitator, and they will have these handouts for you to look over, and you read the scenarios with them, and you'll listen to your facilitator and you'll tell you exactly what we'll do. If you have a child that's in middle school, we'll stay in this area here. And then lastly, if your child's in high school, we'll be in that area. Yes, you guys can get up and get to where you need to be.
One more thing before you go, I want to call your attention back to the reading norms, because when we get to the